Surviving in the Lakian wastes was not for the faint of heart. Still, for those with a free spirit, the draconian laws of Clothopolis, the oppressive dragons of Osek, and the monsters in Metropolis left little other option. Scavengers learned to make a lot out of a little, turning whatever they could find into a weapon or shelter from the relentless waves of sand. A few, it seems, may have even been present for the first apocalypse of Morier. The world may have ended, but I'm not sure that they noticed. Mounted combat. It can be intimidating in Dungeons & Dragons, and a lot of people don't want to invest in a mount because they can't bring it with them into a dungeon, or into a dragon. But there's something about the high-octane speed, metal crashing into metal, explosions that just makes me excited. What we need is a class that's fun to play on a mount in an open field, but also fun in the depths of a dungeon. Basically, we need to get some Mad Max flavor in Dungeons & Dragons. This one's for you, Vera. Thanks for being a good mod.
I'm Goth Yeti and we're rolling out, looking for America's greatest diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Ranger is the most fun class to make subclasses for because you have to make Ranger good. Most other classes, you need to balance out the abilities that the subclass gets with the abilities of the class, but for Ranger, no.
I love trash.
I dunk on Ranger a lot, but it's not necessarily a bad class. It's more of a victim of 5e not knowing what it was going to be at the beginning. Rangers have special abilities to help you track and forage for food, things that players of 5e didn't really enjoy doing. So it got revised in an Unearthed Arcana and it was too good at murder. Then it got revised again and got some stuff that was kind of helpful and some other stuff that was maybe worse than the original version. Ranger spells are probably the best thing about Ranger. Hunter's Mark at level 2 will let you add a d6 of damage to an attack against one creature for an hour, basically just giving you an extra damage die. Zephyr Strike kind of makes you Sonic the Hedgehog, and Swift Quiver lets you shoot real fast. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about, but the subclasses are rad. Hunter Rangers are either a single target destroyer or a master of crowd control. Horizon Walkers get to teleport endlessly. Gloomstalkers let you be a war guy, and Beastmaster is objectively the most fun because your DM has to pretend they're a peppermint pig. So weirdly, even though Ranger is the weakest class, it actually probably has the most competition for rad subclasses. I've got my work cut out for me today. I mentioned earlier that Ranger spells are the coolest part of Ranger, and a lot of Rangers also get other spells for free. For Scavengers, their extra spells help them survive in the harshest environments imaginable. Shield of Faith adds 2 to a creature's AC for up to 10 minutes depending on the Ranger's concentration. For Scavenger Rangers, these visually took the form of wicked awesome spikes. They could use this on themselves or on their mount or on both, as mounts were very important in the Lakian Wastes. If you couldn't outrun a bullet or a bullet, you were lunch. Find Steed let these Rangers conjure a basic mount of their choice. A warhorse, a pony, a camel, or a mastiff, and any spell cast on the Ranger buffing them would also buff their mount, like Shield of Faith. These Rangers loved to race their mounts against rival Scavengers, and they also loved to cheat. Haste doubles a creature's movement speed, adds 2 to their AC, gives them advantage on dexterity saving throws, and an extra action to dash, disengage, or make an additional attack. Again, this would apply to the Ranger and their conjured steed, or even their found greater steed. That's the 4th level spell, Find Greater Steed. It's like Find Steed, but greater. It summons a griffin, a pegasus, a direwolf, a periton, a saber-toothed tiger, or a rhinoceros. Rhinoceroses have the charge ability, so that would make them a mount that's hard to dodge. But sometimes you just need to burn things. Immolation forced a dexterity saving throw on one creature, dealing 8d6 fire damage to those that fail. If they were unable to put out the scavenger's fire, they would take an additional 4d6 damage until they were able to make that dexterity saving throw. Honestly, you can't make it in the Lakian Wastes if you're not able to make an improvised explosive. But that's not the only thing these Rangers were able to craft. By mixing together scraps of metal, garbage, and debris they found throughout the day, they were able to handcraft a unique item.
I love trash.
It It would take them about an hour to make these objects, though they could do that as part of a short rest, although their quick work meant that they usually broke at the end of a short rest as well. Improvised improvement was the first option. This let a ranger add a d4 of piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning damage to a weapon of their choice. The only requirement was it wasn't the same type of damage the weapon already dealt. This would increase to a d6 as they refined their technique around the 11th level. There were warhammers taped to battle axes, spears with bricks tied to the end of them, or the occasional quarterstaff with a couple of nails jammed through it.
You still have that bat?
Bat? What bat?
The one with the nails.
Why?
This was the only practical option when they found themselves in close quarters for a long period of time, though they preferred the open field where they could protect their caravan. This allowed them to craft a set of barding, which is armor for a mount. While wearing this barding, the mounts would have a bonus to their AC, attack rolls, and saving throws equal to the ranger's proficiency bonus. It started off in the medium category. Once the rangers had spent enough time building armor for animals, they were able to increase that to heavy armor at the 11th level. Barding doesn't get discussed a lot, but it's horse armor, and you don't even need to pay extra for it. Vehicles also aren't discussed a lot, but these rangers were able to drive anything. Land vehicle and water vehicle proficiency was a must, which may seem strange as these rangers were born out of the desert. The vehicles used to slide along the sands of the Lakian Wastes actually had more in common with boats than carriages. The Lakian Wastes were a miserable place to live, full of poisonous snakes, acid-spitting lizards, and an unusual amount of radiant damage. When scavengers hit the 7th level, they developed a survivor's will, giving them resistance to poison, acid, and radiant damage, as well as proficiency with constitution saving throws. Strangely, it was radiant damage and not fire. Does that mean that celestials were a bigger issue for them than fiends? Hang on. Sorry about that, I lost myself in a bit of research. At the 11th level, Scavenger Rangers were better at riding mounts than just about anyone else. These riders were so adept at steering their mounts, they gained the benefits of half cover while mounted, as did their mounts.
Above all else, we don't ever let them get in the cars.
They also gained proficiency with heavy armor and no longer had disadvantage on stealth checks while wearing even the heaviest of stuff. Originally, I thought this was just quiet steps on the sands of the Lakian Waste, but apparently it carried through to Atropolis as well. Eventually, the harsh nature of the desert bore its way into the souls of the scavengers. At the 15th level, scavengers began exploiting weaknesses wherever they could find them. If they had advantage on an attack against a creature or an ally within 5 feet of them, they were able to add an extra 2d6 damage to their attack rolls against that creature. The Ranger's steeds were invaluable to this strategy. If they were a melee fighter, they would ride up close and smack things from atop their mount. Some even took the mounted combatant feat to get advantage on attack rolls against creatures smaller than their mount. If they preferred to use range as a ranger, they would send their steed in and gain advantage from afar. Worth noting, advantage and having an ally within 5 feet of the creature wouldn't double up, so that's not 4d6, that's still 2d6 extra damage per attack. But that advantage would help them land critical hits, which would mean 4d6. So does that extra damage work well with the rest of the ranger class? Yes, it's extra damage. That works well with any class. But it works really well with spells like Hunter's Mark or Elemental Weapon for extra damage, or with Swift Quiver to get extra attacks with extra damage. If the Scavenger had the Sharpshooter feat, that'd be 4 attacks per round for 4d8 plus 8d6 plus 60 damage in 1 turn, or around 100 with median rolls. But this also works for a solid Ranger. That's a strength-based ranger. Tape an axe to a maul for an improvised weapon, and you've got 6d6 plus 15 damage per hit after exploited weakness and Hunter's Mark. That's 12d6 plus 30 damage with extra attack, or around 66 damage with median rolls, and you're only using a 1st level spell slot instead of a 5th like with Swift Quiver. Fighting styles from Ranger also obviously help with this, with archery making you more accurate with Sharpshooter, or dueling to add extra damage if you're using something like a versatile weapon like a longsword or a warhammer. Since you can use a shield while dueling, wear the heaviest armor, and get half cover from your mount, you could have 22 AC riding on your mount, or 24 with haste, which would also go on your steed, because Find Steed and Find Greater Steed are better versions of Beastmaster Ranger than Beastmaster Ranger is. That subclass might be a little weak. Having Find Greater Steed gives you several flying options if you want to be a range ranger and fly above everyone else and just shoot them on the ground. But maybe the best part of Ranger is that the last 4 levels are virtually useless, so you get to multi-class. So multi-classing with Scavenger really depends if you want to be a range ranger or a strange ranger. For range rangers, rogues would get sneak attack, so you could add extra damage on top of your extra damage on top of your extra damage on top of your extra damage. There's a lot of damage. Fighter works great for range rangers or for strangers, though I think stranger is the way to go, because you could get a fighting style like great weapon fighting to reroll 1s and 2s on damage die with two-handed weapons. You're rolling a lot of damage die if you're using a maul with an improvised improvement and then also exploited weakness. Or you could go for defense to make your AC even higher. If you want to mix in a spellcaster cleric, particularly Forge Master Cleric, would let you add extra AC on top of your AC from your big heavy armor, and you'd get access to higher level spell slots faster, though you wouldn't get those really good high-level ranger spells. But spells like Warding Bond, Spirit Guardians, and Spirit Shroud would be really good for you and your mount. If you went Druid, you'd have to go pretty far to get the investiture spells, but you could have a Fire Camel. Fire Camel! I think my favorite multi-class option, though, is Armorer Artificer. I know it seems like it would make you multi-ability dependent since Artificer is the intelligence class, but Armorer means that you only have to focus on intelligence. You don't need the strength for heavy armor anymore, your weapon attacks are made with your intelligence modifier instead of dexterity or strength, and because Thunder Gauntlets are simple melee weapons, you'd be able to add improvised improvement to their damage, so you could have spiky rocket gloves. But do spiky rocket gloves measure up to the awesome other Ranger subclasses? The best way for you to find out would be to join my Patreon at the $5 tier, where you'll get access to this subclass and all of the other ones I've made so far, as well as every episode of Building Character in character sheet form for over 6,000 sheets total. That makes it pretty easy to put together a one-shot. Now, normally you'd be able to vote in the polls, but we have December coming up, and I'm just gonna try and get the other subclass videos out early for patrons, so you have that to look forward to, as well as the other subclasses being posted there at some point in December. But you also get character sheets for all of the bonus videos I'm doing in December, so that should be fine. If you can't support the Patreon, that's fine. I get it. Just like the video, subscribe for more, and come back sometime for more from the Gilded Coast of Mortier!